Hey guys, tonight we're drifting into the hazy world of Native American smoke signals, those ethereal wisps curling up from ancient fires like fingers beckoning secrets across endless skies. Picture it, a lone scout on a sun-baked ridge, the air thick with the scent of sage and sun-warmed earth, as a thin plume rises, twisting lazily before blooming into deliberate puffs that dance against the vast blue canvas. It's the original wireless network, folks. No Wi-Fi needed, just a good fire and a sharper eye. But here is your cheeky reality check. You probably won't survive this if you're out there trying it yourself. Modern lungs aren't built for all that mesquite smoke. And let's face it, your neighbors might call the fire department before you send dinners ready. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. Is it midnight in Tokyo or dawn in Dublin? Love hearing where these stories find you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine the crackle of embers in the chill pre-dawn hush. Somewhere on the windswept plains of what we now call the Great Basin, maybe 10,000 years ago, a cluster of early hunter-gatherers huddles around a modest fire pit, flames licking at dry twigs gathered from the sparse scrub. The night air carries the faint, acrid tang of burning juniper, mingling with the earthy musk of dew-kissed soil. One figure, perhaps an elder with calloused hands etched by seasons of survival, tosses a handful of damp leaves onto the blaze. Not for warmth this time, but watch poof, a single, deliberate puff spirals upward, fat and fleeting, dissolving into the star-pricked darkness like a sigh from the earth itself. Across the valley, miles away where the horizon blurs into shadow, another pair of eyes catches it. A nod, a signal received. No words, no drums, just smoke whispering across the void. This wasn't some grand invention born of a eureka moment. It evolved, slow as the creep of glaciers that once carved these canyons. Mainstream history pins the roots of smoke signaling deep in the Paleolithic era, with archaeological digs at sites like Danger Cave in Utah, unearthing charred hearths layered with ash from controlled burns. Evidence that these early innovators weren't just cooking mammoths, but experimenting with visibility. They learned quick: dry wood for a steady column, wet greenery for those bursty interruptions that turned a haze into Morse code avant la lettre. And oh, the sensory poetry of it, the way the smoke stings your eyes just enough to water them, sharpening your gaze on the horizon, while the fire's glow paints flickering shadows on faces weathered by wind and wonder. But let's lean in closer, because here is a quirky tidbit that might make you chuckle in the dark. Some fringe anthropologists whisper about smoke shamans in pre-Columbian lore. Folks who allegedly laced their signals with herbal essences, think sage for clarity or tobacco for urgency, believing the scents carried spiritual intent, turning a tactical puff into a prayer that wafted straight to the ancestors. Imagine the confusion if the wind shifted. Was that enemy approaching? Or just Uncle's bad breath from last night's stew? Historians still argue whether these aromatic add-ons were widespread ritual, or just tall tales spun by storytellers around the very fires they described. Either way, it adds a layer of mischief to the mystery, doesn't it? Like jazzing up your texts with emojis, but with actual clouds. As the sun crests, those first signals multiply. Picture a band of Proto-Shoshone foragers, their deerskin wraps whispering against the grass as they fan out across the alkali flats. One spots a herd of pronghorn antelope grazing oblivious in a distant draw, too far for a shout, too risky for a gallop. So, up goes the signal. 2 quick puffs for game sighted, achieved by smothering the flames with a damp hide, then releasing in rhythm. The response drifts back from the ridge, a single lingering plume proceed with caution. It's intimate, this dialogue with the air, the smoke's grey tendrils curling like lovers' fingers, fragile against the relentless sun that bleaches bones and dreams alike. You can almost taste it, that dry heat baking into your skin, the faint bitterness on your tongue from the fire's breath. Fast forward a tick through the millennia, and these sparks ignite into something more structured. By the time the archaic period rolls around, say 8,000 years back, these puffs aren't just alerts. They're the threads weaving clans together across terrains that swallow sound whole. In the arid southwest, where red rock spires claw at the sky like forgotten gods, early ancestors of the ancestral Puebloans perch on mesa tops, their signals leaping from bluff to bluff. Sensory overload, really. The grit of sandstone underfoot, the metallic tang of dust in the air, and that ever-present hush broken only by a raven's croak or the fire's contented pop. A three-puff burst might mean water source found, guiding thirst-parched kin through labyrinthine canyons where echoes play tricks and thirst is the real thief. And here is where the gentle sarcasm slips in, because if you've ever tried signaling with a backyard barbecue, you know the drill. One wrong gust, and your all-clear turns into a neighborhood fog machine. These early signalers, masters of improvisation, they'd scout the wind's mood first, faces tilted like weather vanes, feeling its cool caress or hot slap before committing flame to message. Jokes aside, though light one now, ever wonder if they had a return to sender code for when the wind blew your secrets right back in your face? Probably just a sheepish shrug and a relight. Diving deeper into the cradle of this craft, consider the coastal tribes up north, where Pacific fogs roll in like uninvited guests. Here, smoke signals cut through the mist like beacons, their dark plumes stark against the silvery haze. A quirky aside, oral traditions from the Yurok people hint at signals used not just for hunting but for matchmaking. A patterned puff from one village to tease availability across the river, because why not let romance ride the thermals? Scholars debate fiercely if this was pure folklore or a genuine social hack. Was Cupid's arrow tipped with smouldering cedar, or just elders meddling from afar? Either way, it humanizes the haze, turning tactical wisps into whispers of the heart. As days bleed into seasons, these ancient sparks fan out, adapting to the land's moods. In the forested east, where hardwood canopies choke the sky, signals punch upward through clearings, their earthy aroma of oak and hickory drifting like a forest's sigh. One mainstream fact anchors it all. Excavations at the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania reveal hearths with ash patterns suggesting deliberate smoke control as far back as 16,000 years. Proof that this wasn't whimsy, but wired into survival's DNA. Yet, the fringe whispers persist. Tales of sky writing in the plains, where Lakota vision quests allegedly used hallucinogenic smokes to etch prophetic patterns, blurring signal and spirit in ways that make your smartwatch blush. Feel the rhythm now, that slow build as puffs evolve from instinct to inheritance. A young apprentice, wide-eyed under a canopy of stars, watches her mentor's hands steady as the earth's pulse layer greens on coals. The first puff, hesitant, like a child's first word. The second, bolder, claiming the sky. And in that moment, across the darkened expanse, another fire answers. Its glow, a distant heartbeat, its ASMR for the soul. The soft hiss of steam rising, the faint sizzle of leaf on flame, lulling you into the vastness where secrets travel light, unburdened by weight or word. But oh, the jokes keep it light. 2 down, 1 to go. If smoke signals were email, these early versions were the spam filters of the Stone Age, weeding out noise for the signal that mattered. As we linger here in this prehistoric glow, the embers settle, inviting you deeper. The wind picks up, carrying that final, fading curl toward horizons yet unexplored. And as those thermals lift the last of that apprentice's tentative curl into the ether, we find ourselves carried forward on invisible currents into an era where these fleeting wisps harden into something sharper languages of the air, etched not in stone or skin, but in the deliberate dance of grey against endless azure. Across the sprawling tapestry of Turtle Island, from the mist-shrouded fjords of the northwest to the sun-scorched badlands of the heartland, diverse native groups begin to craft their own unique puff patterns, turning random haze into the secret languages that bound communities through silent skies. It's like the world's first group chat, but with zero data plan and all the drama of a family reunion where no one speaks aloud. Feel the shift, that subtle quickening of the pulse as clans settle into seasonal rhythms. Their fires no longer solitary beacons, but nodes in a vast, unspoken web. In the lush, fern-draped valleys of the Pacific Northwest, the Chinook and their neighbors huddle under cedar plank longhouses, the air heavy with the salty brine of the sea crashing against rugged shores and the smoky perfume of alder wood smoldering low. Here, signals emerge as layered symphonies, a steady column interrupted by sharp staccato bursts, 3 quick puffs for salmon run thick, achieved by fanning a damp blanket over the flames in precise cadence, the woolen fabric whispering like waves on pebbles. Miles away, across fog-veiled inlets, a response unfurls, a slow, swelling plume that lingers like a held breath, meaning nets ready. Join us at dawn. The sensory hush of it all, the cool dampness clinging to your moccasins, the faint char of fish drying on racks nearby wraps around you, pulling you into this quiet communion where the sky becomes the scroll for stories too urgent for tongues. But let's not romanticize without a wink. These weren't flawless fairy tales. Wind off the Pacific could scatter a message like confetti at a bad wedding, leaving receivers squinting and guessing. Modern aside, if you've ever dealt with autocorrect turning meet me at the dock into meet me at the duck, multiply that frustration by 1,000 no undo button when your clan's dinner depends on it. And here is your first light joke of the stretch. Imagine the awkward family dinners if a miscued puff meant bring the berries instead of bury the bodies. Talk about a berry bad mix-up. Venturing eastward, where the deciduous forests of the northeast rustle with the promise of autumn's gold, the Haudenosaunee, those master diplomats of the Iroquois Confederacy, refine their codes into something almost poetic. Mainstream history credits them with one of the earliest formalized systems around the 15th century, where council fires on hilltops sent patterns that spanned the Finger Lakes. 2 rising puffs followed by a pause and a single fat one for peace talks commence, the smoke's earthy tang of maple and birch blending with the crisp bite of falling leaves underfoot. It was strategy wrapped in subtlety, binding the 6 nations in alliances that echoed across generations, their signals leaping from one elevated lookout to the next, like thoughts passed in a dream. Yet, tucked into the fringes of those tales, a quirky tidbit surfaces from Algonquian oral histories. Some bands allegedly wove in decoy puffs deliberate false starts, like a quick burst that fizzles mid-air, meant to mimic a startled bird's escape and throw off eavesdroppers, human or otherwise. Picture a sly scout layering pine needles just so, creating that erratic twitch in the plume, all while chuckling under his breath at the folly of foes chasing shadows. Historians still argue whether these were clever ruses born of necessity or embellished yarns to puff up the puffers' egos. Did they really fool Spanish explorers sniffing around in the 1600s, or was it just the universe's way of saying not today? Either way, it sprinkles a dash of spy thriller spice into the serenity, turning signalers into the James Bonds of the backwoods, licensed to smolder. As the narrative drifts southward, into the sun-drenched southwest where the air shimmers like a mirage over baked clay, the ancestral Hopi perch on their high pueblos, terraced like steps to the gods, their codes bloom with agricultural urgency. A trio of even-spaced puffs for rains coming plant the corn, the smoke rising pure from pinon resin, its resinous sweetness cutting through the dry, mineral dust that powders everything from your eyelashes to your dreams. Sensory immersion here is total, the rough adobe warm against your palm, the distant lowing of sheep, a faint counterpoint to the fire's contented crackle as these patterns knit villages into a resilient quilt, warnings of drought or flood, traversing the Colorado Plateau without so much as a rustle in the mesquite. Oh, but the sarcasm simmers. In a world of instant grams and snaps, who'd guess that waiting for a smoke reply could take longer than buffering a cat video? Second joke incoming. These Hopi signalers must have had the patience of saints, or at least enough to not ghost their own kin when the wind decided to play hard to get. And speaking of kin, callbacks to our prehistoric sparks. Remember that elders damp leaves in the basin? Well, those experiments have flowered here into full-blown dialects. Each tribe's version a unique patois of pause and plume, ensuring no two signals sound the same across the tribal grapevine. Pushing into the Great Plains, where buffalo thunder across seas of grass under skies vast enough to drown in, the Lakota and their allies craft codes that pulse with the land's wild heart. A rapid series of 4 short bursts means herd to the north, stampede imminent, the smoke's sharp bite of buffalo chips fueling the fire, mingling with the sweet grass crushed under moccasined feet, and the thunderous hush of hooves on the horizon. It's raw. This exchange, the wind whipping your braids like eager fingers, the sun's glare turning distant puffs into silver threads, binding tippies into a nomadic network where survival hinged on seeing the unseen. Fringe whispers add flavor. Comanche lore hints at spirit signals. Puffs laced with sweetgrass braids that were said to carry blessings for the hunt, their aromatic trail believed to guide arrows true even if the smoke itself scattered. Was this shamanic sleight of hand, or just a morale booster with a side of aromatherapy? Scholars bicker over it endlessly, ritual reality or romantic retrofit, but it evokes that tingly ASMR of incense curling slow, inviting you to breathe deep and let the mystery settle like ash. These emerging codes, then, aren't mere mechanics. They're the sinews of society, flexing silent across divides that maps can't touch. In the southeast's humid embrace, where magnolia blooms heavy and the air hums with cicada symphonies, Cherokee signals weave through oak hammocks, a languid, wavy plume for trade caravan approaches, its hickory smoke soft and vanilla-tinged against the loamy rot of fallen leaves. Third joke, to keep the eyelids heavy. If emojis were invented then, their fire emoji chain would have crashed the server, too many hearts and thumbs up lost to the breeze. As patterns proliferate, so does the poetry, the way a single, spiraling twist might encode lover awaits, its tendril tracing lazy hearts in the heavens, or a cluster of erratic bursts warn of rival clan near, scattering like startled quail. It's all there in the hush. The faint pop of sap bursting, the cool shadow of a cloud sliding over sun-warmed earth, the collective intake of breath as eyes trace the sky's ephemeral script. These secret languages, born of necessity and nurtured by nights under uncountable stars, bind not just bodies but the very breath of the people, whispering unity into the wind's vast, indifferent song. And as one such plume crests a distant butte, dissolving into the golden haze of eventide, it beckons us onward, toward the desert scouts who would sharpen these skies into weapons of whispers. Toward the desert scouts who would sharpen these skies into weapons of whispers. Their hands steady as the sun's arc over the endless rust-red sprawl of the southwest, where every horizon promises both sanctuary and snare. In the bone-dry cradle of canyons and creosote flats, Apache and Navajo warriors, those lean shadows born of the land's unyielding forge, begin to refine these inherited arts into something lethal and lyrical, previewing the layered grass fires that would hurl mile-spanning messages across the arid mesas, like arrows loosed from a bow of pure silence. It's the evolution from whisper to war cry, all without raising a voice. In a theater where the stage is scorched earth, and the audience, unwitting, is the relentless blue overhead. Breathe it in, that parched perfume of sun-baked ocotillo and the faint, peppery bite of creosote after a rare flash flood. As we settle into the 18th century's simmer, picture a young Apache scout, his lithe frame draped in a breechcloth the color of canyon dust, crouched on a wind-sculpted outcrop overlooking the Gila River's serpentine gleam. The air hums with heat, a tangible weight pressing on your shoulders like an unwanted blanket, while distant thunderheads tease rain they'll never deliver. He kindles his signal fire, not with flint and tinder alone, but with a ritual of restraint, dry mesquite for the base, coaxed to a low, sullen glow that won't betray with too much light. Then, the refinement, the wet grass, harvested from hidden seeps and twisted into tight wads, slapped onto the coals to birth those patterned puffs, each one a calculated breath held and released. These warriors, guardians of the Chiricahua and Jicarilla bands, didn't stumble into mastery. It was hammered out in the anvil of necessity, as Spanish incursions probed the borders like fingers into a hornet's nest. Mainstream history logs it clear. By the mid-1700s, Apache raiders had elevated smoke signaling to a tactical cornerstone, with journals from Franciscan outposts noting puffs like signals from hell coordinating horse thefts that left patrols chasing ghosts across the Sonoran desert. Sensory immersion pulls you right there, the sting of sweat tracing rivulets down your spine, the gritty rasp of sand between teeth as you chew on a strip of jerky, and that pivotal hush when the first layer hits. Sizzle. Then surge. A fat plume, erupting skyward, visible from the next ridge where kin wait with bows drawn and breaths bated. But oh, the quirks that color the canvas, a fringe tidbit from Navajo weavers' oral threads, suggest some scouts infused their grass with pulverized turquoise dust. Not for color too subtle at distance, but for sky harmony, believing the mineral's blue essence appeased the winds to carry messages true. Imagine grinding those sacred stones under moonlight, the chalky powder mixing with dew-damp blades, all for a puff that shimmered just a hair more ethereally. Historians still argue whether this was poetic protocol or practical placebo. Did it steady the thermals, or just steady the sender's soul amid the chaos? Either way, it's a whisper of whimsy in the warrior's world, turning tactical tedium into something almost alchemical, like adding a dash of hot sauce to your morning eggs for that extra kick of fate. Layer by layer, the craft deepens. The Navajo, those enduring dine of the high plateaus, adapt with a farmer's precision, their signals pulsing from atop the red rock citadels of Canyon de Chelly. A two-puff opener, quick smother, quick release for scouts return with news, followed by variations. Elongated drags of damp yucca fronds for elaboration, the smoke's vegetal tang sharp against the sweet rot of blooming cholla nearby. You feel the earth's pulse in it, the cool shade of an overhang flecked with ancient petroglyphs, stick figures perhaps mimicking these very plumes, while the fire's heat blooms like a secret blush on your cheeks. Modern aside, in our era of drone drops and satellite pings, it's almost comical how these guys turn Mother Nature's Wi-Fi into a weapon. No batteries required, just a prayer and a good poker face. Sarcasm simmers soft as we watch a training rite unfold. Elders bark corrections in hushed tones too hasty. The wind laughs at fools while apprentices fan their blankets with the rhythm of a heartbeat, learning to read the air's fickle mood. First joke to ease the tension. If smoke signals had Yelp reviews, these Southwest sessions would have been 5 stars for authentic experience, but docked points for occasional ghosting by gusts. And as techniques tighten, so do the tales of a famed Navajo signaler named Hastin Tlotzi, who legend says could thread a 3-message chain across Black Mesa in under an hour, his puffs lingering just long enough to paint pictures in the sky, enemy camp layouts sketched in curls and pauses, all decoded by the twitch of an eyelid miles away. Pushing into the 19th century's gathering storm, Apache ingenuity flares brighter against the encroaching U.S. shadow. Scouts like those under Manga's Coloradas layer their fires with surgical savvy. Base of sun-bleached thorns for quick ignition, topped with stratified greens alder for short bursts, willow for sustains, creating symphonies of smoke that arced over the Dragoon Mountains like neural firings in the desert's vast brain. The air thickens with it, that acrid veil draping the senses, mingling with the metallic zing of distant arroyos, and the faint, leathery scent of horse sweat from the remuda below. Its ASMR etched in adversity. The soft thump of a hide blanket dropping, the prolonged hiss as steam wrestles flame, lulling you into the trance of translation where a cluster of 4 erratic puffs screams cavalry flank scatter to draws. Jerez, where the scholarly squabble sneaks in, gentle as a breeze off the Rincon. Experts tussle over whether these refinements borrowed from Pueblo neighbors or sprang pure from Apache isolation. Did intermarriage weave in Hopi pause patterns? Or was it all homegrown grit? The debate simmers like stew over coals, unresolved, inviting us to ponder as we trace a plume's path. Quirky counterpoint. Some accounts fringe out to echo fires, where scouts ignited secondary blazes in caves to amplify signals via reflected heat, turning acoustics into optics, smoke bouncing like a pinball, confusing foes who thought the sky was multiplying. Callbacks tug us back. Remember those Chinook staccatos across the inlets? Here, in the southwest's kiln, they've baked into bolder strokes. The wet grass layers now a lexicon of survival, each wad a word in the wind's dictionary. A lone Navajo rider, scanning from Defiance Plateau, spots U.S. wagons snaking through the pass. Up flares the alert. Single puff. Pause. Double burst traps set. Await ambush. The response drifts lazy from the south rim, a coiling serpent of grey affirming understood blades sharp. Jokes keep the cadence cozy. Second one. These scouts were basically the original ghostwriters, penning plots in puffs that vanished before the ink could dry. As the sun dips toward the jagged teeth of the superstitions, casting long shadows that swallow the valleys whole, these honed crafts pulse with purpose, binding bands in a ballet of the barely seen. Sensory fade, the cooling earth releasing trapped day's heat in waves, the fire's embers glowing like fallen stars, and that final, dissolving curl carrying not just coordinates but the clan's unyielding pulse. Warriors gather round, sharing water from gourds cool as river stones, their laughter low and laced with lore, as the sky purples into promise. Yet, the third joke lingers like aftersmoke. If you'd pitched this to Silicon Valley Atlas alerts via arson, they'd fund it in a heartbeat, calling it disruptive tech, while ignoring the genius who'd been beta testing it for centuries. And so, with the desert's hush folding in like a well-worn blanket, these mile-spanning messages propel us toward the raids they ignited, where Geronimo's ghostly dispatches would turn whispers into tempests. Those fragile plumes, now the unseen conductors of a symphony of shadows, as Apache warriors under the old lions gaze slip through the creases of the land like water through stone. In the scorched heart of the 1,882nd Southwest, during campaigns that etched defiance into the annals of resistance, scouts wove invisibility into the very fabric of their raids, illustrating how puffs coordinated chaos without a whisper, turning the arid expanse into a chessboard where every move was masked in dissolving grey. It's the stuff of frontier fever dreams. Folks' raids launched not with bugles or boots, but with breaths of smoke that bloomed and vanished like the will-o'-the-wisps of vengeful spirits. Sink into the twilight hush of the Dragoon Mountains, where the air cools to a velvet chill laced with the ghost of midday's furnace, and the scent of wild tobacco clings to the breeze like a half-remembered promise. Geronimo himself, Goyathle, the one who yawns, though there's precious little yawning in these years, crouches in a shallow arroyo, his frame wiry as mesquite root, eyes like polished obsidian scanning the starlit rim. It's 1881, the Treaty of 1871, a frayed thread, and U.S. troopers under General Crook prowl the borders like hounds on a cold scent. No Grand Council fires here. Instead, a scout named Esquine scales the eastern flank, his moccasins silent on the talus scree that crunches like brittle bones underfoot. He kindles his dispatch with the precision of a poet. Base coals from sun-dried dung for that low, reluctant glow. Then layers of wet bunchgrass, plucked from a hidden spring. First a thin veil for the opener puff, signaling Geronimo calls assembly, its acrid whisper rising slow, coiling against the moon-pale sky. Across the valley, perhaps 5 miles as the raven flies. Another watcher catches it, a single, deliberate bulge in the night haze, unmistakable amid the Milky Way's sprawl. Response flares from a distant knob. 2 measured bursts. Warriors en route, achieved by rhythmic slaps of a rabbit-skin blanket, the fur's musky warmth brushing the signaler's cheek like a conspirator's nudge. Sensory tide pulls you under the faint sizzle of steam-kissing embers, the night's chorus of coyote yips echoing off basalt walls, and that prickling awareness of eyes everywhere, friend and foe alike, in the dark. These dispatches aren't just dots and dashes. They're the raid's nervous system, pulsing coordinates for ambushes that would bleed the bluecoats dry without a shot fired until the knife's edge. Mainstream history stamps it bold. During the Sierra Madre forays of 1885, Geronimo's band of 30-odd fighters used chain smoke signals to orchestrate hit-and-run strikes on supply lines, evading over 5,000 troops through maneuvers that left Crook's dispatches fuming about vanishing devils. Journals from the era, tucked in dusty archives, recount how a dawn puff chain lured a patrol into Skeleton Canyon, where waiting Apaches melted from the cliffs like morning mist, vanishing before reinforcements could blink. Its tactical elegance, the smoke's ethereal veil granting the illusion of omnipresence here, gone, striking from the ether while the earth's own camouflage, those ochre-streaked boulders and thorny veils of catclaw, swallowed the rest. But lean closer to the fire's edge, and a quirky tidbit flickers up from the embers. Fringe Apache lore, passed in hushed tones around winter hogans, claims one scout laced his grass with pulverized owl feathers during the Sibique Creek skirmish of 81, believing the bird's silent flight infused the puffs with night invisibility, making signals not just unseen but unfelt by enemy spirits. Picture the ritual. Feathers ground fine as talc under a full moon, mixed into the damp wad, releasing not just steam, but a subtle, feathery musk that supposedly baffled tracking dogs. Historians still argue whether this was shamanic savvy. Did the downy particles really diffuse the plume's thermal trail? Or was it psychosomatic sleight? Warriors fighting fiercer under the guise of ghostly aid. Either way, it's a wink from the wild side, turning a survival hack into something straight out of a desert fable, where even the wind conspires with the wary. As the campaigns coil tighter, these ghostly threads spin chaos into choreography. Imagine the heat of a July noon in the Chiricahua strongholds, the sun a hammer on your nape, air shimmering with the dry rustle of jojoba leaves and the distant, metallic clang of a blacksmith's forge echoing from some forsaken fort. A scout atop Bear Mountain layers his fire for the masterstroke. 3 rapid puffs for enemy column. Wagons heavy strike at pass. The grass hissing like a kettle as it blooms skyward, visible across the basin where Geronimo's riders wait, reins loose in calloused fists. The coordination unfolds silent. Puffs, relay, flanks, feints, fallback draws, all while the band ghosts through slot canyons narrow as veins. their passage marked only by the faint scuff of dust and the occasional, muffled whinny stifled with a gentle palm. Modern aside, we'd call it guerrilla GPS. But without the satellites, just scouts with lungs full of resolve and eyes trained to the horizon's lie. Sarcasm curls soft as the smoke itself. In an age of telegraphs and trains, these puffs made the U.S. Army look like kids playing tag, always one step and one whisper behind. First joke to lighten the load? If Geronimo had an OnlyFans, it'd be subscriber-exclusive raid recaps, delivered via premium puff patterns, no spoilers for the troops, and callbacks whisper through. Remember those Navajo turquoise infusions from the last drift? Here, in Geronimo's fray, they evolve into full myth, scouts daubing signal sites with clay ochre for earth binding, ensuring messages stuck to the thermals like burrs on a sock. Deeper into the fray, the 1,886 Skeleton Canyon parley hangs in the balance. But signals seal, smaller seals first. A midnight chain across the Peloncillo Divide warns of Apache Kid's splinter band's approach, puffs twisting like serpents in the lantern glow haze. Pause.puff for ally or ruse. The reply, a languid spiral from the south, affirms unity, cueing a convergence that catches crook scouts flat-footed at dawn, horses scattering like startled quail under a hail of arrows, silent as sin. Sensory swell. The night's dew beading cool on your brow, the fire's afterglow painting faces in ruddy flickers, and that profound quiet after the dispatch only the wind's low moan through agave spines, carrying the clan's collective exhale. Scholarly winds stir here, gentle as a zephyr off the Gila. Academics bicker over the signals. True bite were they the raid's spine, dictating every dart and dodge, or mere morale multipliers, letting warriors feel the web even as luck and land did the heavy lifting? The debate drifts like unsettled ash, unresolved, urging us to weigh the whispers against the thunder. Quirky echo. Tales fringe out to a phantom puff during the Turquoise Valley raid, where a decoy signal erratic bursts, mimicking a dying fire, drew troopers into a dry wash, only for the real band to melt away laughing, the false plume their jesters cap. These dispatches, then, cloak the campaigns in a shroud of the sublime, where chaos bends to the breath. Picture the aftermath of a strike near Fort Bowie. Warriors regroup in a hidden basin, sharing pinole from pouches gritty with cornmeal, the air thick with the sated earth's perfume and the faint, lingering char of spent signals. Laughter ripples low tales of bluecoat bewilderment swapped like trading beads, while a lone scout climbs again, layering greens for the next whisper. Rest, then ride more ghosts await. Second joke simmers in. These puffs were the ultimate. No call, no show. Enemies RSVP'd to empty skies every time. As the moon arcs toward the mountains, jagged moor, casting silver sheens on sweat-slicked shoulders. The night's hush deepens, broken only by the soft scrape of whetstone on blade. The final dispatch of the eve curls upward, a single, lingering plume for dream of victory, dissolving into the starfield like a sigh released. It's ASMR in adversity. The prolonged hush of cooling coals, the rustle of bedrolls unrolled on sand, still warm as a lover's palm, lulling the band and you into the rhythm of resilience. Third joke fades with the embers. If smoke signals were social media, Geronimo's feed would have been all cryptic stories that vanished after 24 hours, leaving followers and foes eternally scrolled. And so, with the desert folding its arms in watchful truce, these coordinated chaoses propel us onward toward the canyons, where echoes amplified every ethereal word. Toward the canyons where echoes amplified every ethereal word. Those labyrinthine gashes in the earth that swallowed sounds but flung smoke skyward like offerings to an indifferent vault, turning the Southwest's rugged spine into a chorus of the unseen. Here, in the throat of the land where walls of striated sandstone rise like the ribs of some colossal, slumbering beast, signals bounce over terrains that mock the straight line, exploring how wind and elevation conspired to transform mesas into natural telegraphs, relaying whispers from rim to rim in a game of aerial tag that spanned dozens of miles without a single echo betraying the source. It's nature's own relay race. Folks' puffs handed off on thermals like batons in a marathon where the finish line is just another vantage and the crowd is coyotes watching from the crevices. Ease into the golden slant of a late afternoon sun dipping toward the Chaco Canyon's fractured horizon, where the air hangs heavy with the baked clay tang of ancient ruins and the faint, resinous sigh of pinon pines clinging to sheer drops. A Navajo scout, perhaps a descendant of those who etched kivas into the cliffs a millennium prior, perches on the lip of a 500-foot chasm, his woven basket of damp reeds balanced on one knee like a trusted confidant. The wind here is a fickle lover now, a gentle zephyr lifting the hem of his blanket like a flirt, now a sudden gust that could scatter secrets to the four directions. He reads it first, face tilted to catch the invisible currents eddying up from the depths, cool and mineral-laced, carrying the damp whisper of the San Juan River far below. Only then does he commit. A quick scrape of flint on steel, coals nursed from saddlebag embers, and the first layer reeds twisted tight, slapped down to birth a plump puff that surges upward, caught by the updraft and hurled across the gap like a stone skipped on water. Watch it arc, that grey pearl against the deepening indigo, cresting the far rim where it kisses the eye of another watcher, who fans his own reply. A paired burst for path-clear flank east, the smoke's vegetal steam mingling with the sharp ozone of an approaching squall. Sensory drift envelops you, the rough bite of canyon grit under your nails as you steady against the edge, the distant trickle of water mocking your thirst like a half-heard lullaby, and that profound vertigo of vastness, where a misstep drops you into silence eternal. These canyons don't just carry signals, they amplify them, the layered strata acting as natural funnels, channeling thermals that lift plumes higher, farther, turning a local alert into a landscape-spanning soliloquy. Elevation is the unsung hero here. Mesas like islands in a sea of stone, their flat tops perfect perches where winds converge, boosting visibility to 20 miles or more on a clear day, as if the gods themselves had sculpted signal towers from the bones of the earth. Mainstream history carves it in stone, or rather, in the ledgers of 19th century topographers. U.S. Army surveys from the 1,850 like those by Lieutenant Emil Whipple, along the 35th parallel, marveled at how Apache signals spanned the Grand Canyon's breaks, noting puffs relayed from Kaibab Plateau to Supai Village in under an hour, outpacing couriers on foot by days. It was cartography's quiet astonishment. These savage telegraphs, as they dubbed them, exploiting the Colorado's fractured folds, where wind shear layered the air like pages in a book, each gust a turn that propelled smoke into the next chapter. Feel the thrill of it, that moment when your puff crests the divide, the air thinning to a crisp bite that sharpens every sense, while below, the river's roar fades to a murmur, irrelevant to the sky's domain. But tucked into the alcoves of anecdote, a quirky tidbit gleams like fool's gold. Fringe tales from Havasupai elders speak of whisper winds, seasonal drafts said to be invoked by scattering corn pollen into the fire before signaling, the fine yellow dust allegedly sweetening the thermals to curve plumes around overhangs, dodging downdrafts like a dancer in a storm. Imagine the ritual under a crescent moon. Pollen sifted slow as sand through fingers, blooming the smoke with a faint, corny perfume that supposedly charmed the canyon spirits into compliance. Historians still argue whether this was meteorological myth or microengineering. Did the pollen's particulates really alter airflow, creating micro-eddies for tighter trajectories? Or was it the power of belief bending the breeze? Either way, it's a sprinkle of sorcery on the science, turning a gust into a genie that grants your message wings, and chuckling at the hubris of maps that ignore the magic. As day wanes into the canyon's purple gloam, these natural relays hum with habit. Picture a chain across Zion's narrows, where slot walls squeeze the wind into a howling flute, forcing scouts to time their puffs with the draft's rhythm. Layered sage for short hops over narrows, pine boughs for the long hauls up Navajo sandstone tiers. The air vibrates with it, a low thrum you feel in your chest like distant thunder, laced with the wet earth scent of hidden seeps and the dry crackle of lizards skittering over sun-warmed stone. Modern aside, Wed slaps solar panels on these mesas today, calling it green tech. But these folks had the ultimate off-grid sun-powered updrafts and elevation hacks that made every bluff a booster station. No permits needed. Sarcasm whispers through the wind's weave. In a world obsessed with signal strength bars, these canyons were 5 by 5, full bars of fate. If you could just sweet-talk the zephyr. First joke to tousle the twilight. If canyons had yelp for winds, it'd be great for relays, but 0 stars for small talk, always ghosting mid-convo. And callbacks curl in like familiar smoke. Remember Geronimo's dispatches over the dragoons? Those were mere previews. Here, in the canyon's embrace, they multiply. Echoes bouncing puffs from Echo Park to Hovenweep, turning a solo signal into a surround sound strategy, where one scout's breath echoes in a dozen ears. Deeper into the folds, where the San Juan's tributaries carve fractal veins, Hopi messengers exploit the amphitheater effect. Mesas ringed like natural coliseums, where elevation gradients stack thermals in tiers, lifting signals in escalating waves. A 3-puff alert for raiders below. Quick wads of mule-fat grass, hissing into bursts, races up the amphitheater's curve, amplified by converging winds that pin it against the far wall. Visible from subsidiary rims where allies fan responses in kind, sensory hush descends. The cool updraft brushing your skin like a sigh, the faint alkaline dust of alcove floors powdering your soles, and that suspended breath as the plume hangs, suspended in the golden hour's glow, before the next gust claims it. Its ASMR amplified the prolonged whoosh of wind through hoodoos, the soft patter of pebbles dislodged by a boot, lulling you into the land's lexicon. Scholarly breezes stir soft in these straits. Researchers debate endlessly if the canyon's acoustic dead zones inspired the visual pivot. Did the silence of swallowed shouts birth the smoke's supremacy? Or was it always the sky's domain, land just the launch pad? The question lingers like a half-formed plume, open to the wind's whim. Quirky ripple, Zuni lore fringes to mirror fires, where scouts ignited blazes in reflective basalt caves to double plumes via heat mirages, creating illusory doubles that baffled scouts' smoke twins dancing in the haze, turning one message into a mocking chorus. These amplified reaches then bind the broken terrain into a breathing whole. Envision a dusk relay over the goosenecks of the San Juan, where meanders loop like knotted ropes. A scout on the outer bend layers his fire against the river's bend wind, puffs arcing inward on the rebound current, decoded on the inner rim as ford-safe cross at moonrise. The band converges silent, moccasins whispering over slick rock, sharing mescal twists sticky with sap, their low murmurs blending with the night's frog chorus. Second joke simmers. These canyon telegraphs were nature's group text endless forwards, but blame the wind for any read but unread drama. As stars prick the velvet dome overhead, the final chain fades, a solitary curl from Betatakin's overlook, lingering long on the updraft's grace, carrying home fire's weight across the void. The cooling stone releases the day's heat in slow waves, wrapping you in earthen arms, while embers pulse like distant heartbeats. Third joke drifts off. If mesas could tweet, it'd be all elevation puns feeling on top of the world, sending highs your way. But luckily, they stick to puffs, keeping it classy. And so, with the canyons cradling their secrets in shadowed folds, these echoed amplifications echo onward into the silent duels where rival tribes' codes clashed with invaders' eyes. Invaders' eyes. Those pale, squinting stares from blue-coated patrols that strained against the skies. Vast blankness, forever a beat behind the plumes that scripted surrender from afar, as intertribal communications clashed in the southwest's simmering cauldron, revealing layered codes that outfoxed the U.S. forces in a ballet of strategic silence. Picture the 1,860 seconds dust-choked trails snaking through the Mescalero Badlands, where Apache bands fierce as the thorns that snag their cloaks interlace signals with Navajo kin, their puffs a clandestine braid weaving through the fray like veins of silver in quartz. It's the original Cold War. Folks' hot pursuits chilled by the hush of the horizon, where every curl carried not just coordinates but the clan's cunning, turning the invaders' telegraphs into tin cans on strings while the sky's wires hummed with secrets too swift for spurs. Drift into the lavender haze of a monsoon-threatened dawn over the White Mountains, the air thick with the petrichor promise of rain that never quite falls, mingling with the smoky veil of last night's cookfires, where venison scraps still sizzle faint on cooling stones. A Mescalero scout, his face etched with ochre sigils like maps of old grudges, hunkers on a wind-gnawed pinnacle, blanket draped loose over shoulders scarred by too many close grazes. Below, U.S. cavalry under Kit Carson's iron gaze fords the Pecos, their tin cups clinking like impatient teeth. Oblivious to the web tightening overhead, he layers his dispatch with the intimacy of a lover's note, base of charred cedar for that steady stem, then stratified wads damp grama grass for the staccato opener, signaling bluecoats' forward flank from cedars, followed by a willow frond drag for Navajo riders link at noon. The steam's herbal whisper rising in a helix that twists lazy against the climbing sun, visible from the distant Chusca slopes where allies await with arrows fletched from eagle tail. Across the divide, a Navajo counterpart mirrors it from Shiprock's shadow. His response, a paired plume punched through gathering clouds, understood decoys south. The smoke's resinous bite cutting the morning's cool damp like a knife through fog. Sensory immersion sinks deep, the gritty kiss of volcanic tuff under your palms as you brace the edge. The faint, salty tang of sweat-soaked buckskin, and that suspended thrill when the puff blooms, fat and fleeting, before the wind claims it for the canyon's chorus. These silent duels weren't solo acts. They were symphonies of subterfuge, intertribal codes, layered like sedimentary rock. Apache bursts for immediacy, Navajo spirals for nuance outfoxing patrols who dismiss the sky as empty as their promises, their field glasses sweeping useless arcs while messages multiplied in the updrafts. Mainstream history etches it indelible. In the Navajo Long Walk of 1864, signals spanning the Defiance Plateau coordinated escape clusters, with Army reports from Fort Defiance griping about elusive smokes that herded 8,000 souls through hidden defiles, evading roundups by days and turning Carson's scorched earth into a game of blind man's bluff. It was logistics laced with legerdemain, the puffs dictating water caches, sentry rotations, even feigned surrenders that drew troops into ambushes where silence struck louder than lead. Feel the weight of it. That moment of translation, a cluster of 3 erratic bursts, decoded as trap-sprung rendezvous at Black Rock, the air humming with the low buzz of horseflies and the distant, muffled thunder of retreating hooves, all while the plume dissolves like contrails from a ghost plane. Yet, from the fringes of forgotten journals, a quirky tidbit unfurls like a hidden frond. Some Apache oral strands weave in mirror codes, where scouts positioned facing east at dawn used the rising sun's glare to silver, their plumes rubbing signal sites with pulverized galena ore for a metallic sheen that reflected light, turning puffs into shimmering decoys that mimicked mirages, luring spotters off course. Imagine the alchemy, all ground under heel into the damp grass, releasing a faint, sulphurous whiff that blended with the smoke, creating illusions that danced on the retina like heat devils with intent. Historians still argue whether this was optical opportunism. Did the ore's reflectivity really bend light to fabricate false trails, or was it the mind's mirage, foes chasing phantasms born of fatigue and folklore? Either way, it's a sly sleight in the shadows, adding a dash of desert dazzle to the duel, like jazzing your poker hand with a wild card from the wind. As the decade drags into bloodier braids, these clashes crest in the Rincon Mountains' thorny folds, where Jicarilla Apaches entwine signals with Ute allies across the borderlands. A midday chain under a hammer sun, air wavering like a bad watercolor, laced with the prickly pear's cloying sweetness and the dry rasp of quail, calling false alarms, relays supply, train vulnerable hit at wash crossing. Puffs, layered with ocotillo tips for that spiky silhouette, unmistakable to trained eyes but mere haze to the uninitiated. The Ute response spirals back from the San Juan's rim, a languid coil affirming horses ready faint north, binding the bands in a buffer against the inexorable push. Modern aside, in our drone-drenched days, this was peak asymmetric warfare, low-tech hacks that jammed the enemy's high-horse hubris. No firewalls to breach, just the sky's open source. Sarcasm simmers gentle as the gathering dusk. While Washington wired the nation with Morse, these tribes were already cloud computing, their codes crashing cavalry comms without a single crossed line. First joke to ease the edge. If those bluecoats had smoke detectors, they'd have set off false alarms for every all clear. Turning forts into perpetual fire drills talk about overkill, and callbacks coil through like familiar thermals. Remember the canyon echoes amplifying Geronimo's ghosts? Here, in these duels, they reverberate intertribal puffs, bouncing from Apache Bluff to Navajo Mesa, outpacing Pony Express by pure physics. The layered codes, a lexicon of not today, etched in evaporating ink. Deeper into the fray, the 1,870 seconds, Victorio campaigns pulse with this partnered precision. Scouts atop the Black Range layer, fires against monsoon squalls, the rain's metallic petrichor heavy on the tongue, puffs punching through veils of mist to warn scouts incoming circle wagons, decoded by Pinal Apache kin, who fan replies in the downpour's drum. Ambush, set, draw them in. The silence is strategic, a vacuum that sucks in the foe, their bugles blaring bravado into voids, where only wind replies. Sensory swell. The mud's cool suck at your ankles, the fire's defiant crackle defying the deluge, and that intimate hush post-signal, broken by the soft patter of droplets on upturned faces, lulling the tension like rain on a tin roof. Scholarly shadows play long here, soft as twilight over the Tularosa. Professors pore over whether these intertribal layers fostered a proto-alliance network. Did the codes evolve in tandem, a shared dialect born of shared siege? Or were they ad hoc harmonies, improvised in the heat? The debate drifts unresolved, like a puff caught in crosswinds, inviting your own midnight musings. Quirky undercurrent. Fringe Ute tales fringe further to spirit relays, where medicine men allegedly blessed signals with eagle down floated into the plume, said to summon thermal boosts from thunderbirds, feathers twirling in the grey like confetti from the clouds, turning messages into avian airmail. These silent stratagems, then, cloak the Southwest in a shroud of shrewdness, where rivalries with the Republic birthed reluctant kinships. Envision a parched eve in the Mule Mountains. Warriors from feuding bands, old Apache Ute blood feuds, thawed by common cause, huddled round a shared signal fire, passing a gourd of tepid mezcal water, The liquid's agave bites sharp against the night's cooling silk. Laughter bubbles low. Tales of outfoxed lieutenants swapped like scalps, while the final dispatch curls skyward. A single, meditative plume for hold the line dawn brings deliverance. Second joke lingers. These codes were the ultimate friend zone for foes. Lots of mixed signals, but never quite ghosting the game. As the stars wheel slow overhead, stitching the black with silver threads, the embers settle into a ruddy pulse. Mirroring heartbeats synced across the miles. The wind hushes, carrying that dissolving curl toward unseen rims, where eyes, brown and blue alike, strain into the same indifferent night. It's ASMR in the arena. The faint shift of gravel under shifting weight. The prolonged exhale as coals sigh into sleep, wrapping the duelists in the land's indifferent lullaby. Third joke fades with the firefly flickers. If you'd bottled this silence as perfume, it'd be eau d'évasion, subtle notes of sage and sarcasm, guaranteed to leave pursuers sniffing their own confusion. And so, with the duels dissolving into the dark like their own deceptions, these outfoxed invaders propel us toward the weather's whimsical whispers, where elements turned every puff into a gamble with the gods. A gamble with the gods, those capricious deities of dust and downpour who toyed with every tendril rising from the coals, turning the southwest skies into a crapshoot, where a zephyr could crown a king, or a squall could crown a clown, as elemental forces shaped the successive signals in ways that delved deep into the whimsy of ancient alerts. Here, in the vast amphitheater of arroyos and alcoves, storms and breezes weren't mere backdrop, but co-conspirators, adding layers of unpredictability that forced scouts to read the air like a lover's mood, sultry one breath, stormy the next, transforming the telegraph of the skies into a tango with the tempest, where one wrong step meant your all-clear dissolved into what the hell was that. Settle into the sultry stall of a midsummer afternoon over the Sonoran Flats, where the heat folds around you like a too-tight embrace, the air a shimmering soup of creosote's oily exhale, and the distant, baked bread warmth of saguaro ribs splitting under the sun's indifferent glare. A young Chiricahua apprentice, his brow beaded with sweat that traces lazy paths down temples tattooed with clam marks, pauses mid-layer on his signal mound, a low cairn of river rocks shielding the coals from prying eyes below. The breeze teases first, a playful puff of its own, riffling the damp switchgrass in his fist like fingers through hair, carrying the faint, briny whisper of a gulf current that's wandered too far inland. He waits, breath synced to the land's lazy pulse, until the thermal kicks up hot air rising from the scorched pan like steam from a hidden spring, hoisting his initial burst skyward. A single, buoyant plume for herd grazes, easy drive north. The smoke's grey grace caught and carried miles across the Bahada, blooming fat against the cobalt, before fraying into feathery wisps that dance like indecisive ghosts. But oh, the whimsy waits in the wings, that same breeze, fickle as a fair-weather friend, shifts quadrant mid-flight, shearing the plumes sideways into a scrub-oak thicket where it snags and scatters, leaving the receiver on the far ridge, squinting through the haze, decoding half a message and improvising the rest. Sensory silk wraps its soft, the sun's copper kiss on your shoulders, the coal's low murmur like a storyteller clearing his throat, and that anticipatory itch in your palms as you clutch the blanket, ready to fan or smother based on the wind's whispered whim. These elemental dances weren't footnotes. They were the fine print of fate, breezes bottling messages in updrafts one moment, only to uncork them in downdrafts the next, turning a 10-mile alert into a game of hot potato with the horizon. Mainstream history logs the ledger. During the 1877 Buffalo Soldiers campaigns in the Tonto Basin, Army chronicler John Bourke noted in his journals how Apache signals faltered spectacularly in Haboob dust storms, those wall of sand behemoths rolling off the Mojave, burying plumes in ochre obscurity and forcing delays that let Patrols slipped the noose, a reminder that even the best-layered grass couldn't outrun a wall of grit moving at 60 miles per hour. It was environmental judo, the weather flipping the script on senders and spies alike, with scouts hunkering in wadi shadows, faces muffled in bandanas, tasting of talc and regret, waiting for the gale to gasp its last before relighting the line. Feel the frenzy. Sand scouring skin like 1,000 tiny accusations, the fire's defiant flicker through the veil, and that post-storm clarity when the air rinses clean, sharp with ozone and opportunity, inviting a fresh puff to reclaim the sky. Tucked into the twisters of tradition, though, a quirky tidbit spirals up like a dust devil's secret. Fringe lore from the Tiwa people whispers of rain, dancers' ploys, where signalers in monsoon season would scatter pulverized cornmeal into their wet grass layers, the starchy grains allegedly clumping the steam into denser, rain-resistant puffs that punched through drizzle like stubborn prayers, a gritty hack that turned downpours from dousers to mere drapes. Picture the prep under thunder's grumble. Meal ground fine as hope, kneaded into the wad, releasing a faint, toasty aroma that mingled with petrichor, supposedly coaxing the clouds to part just enough for passage. Historians still argue whether this was clever colloid chemistry, the meal's absorbency binding moisture for tighter plumes, or mere ritual roulette. Faith in the flour outpacing the facts. Either way, it's a whimsical wager, sprinkling kitchen cunning into the cosmos, like adding cornstarch to your gravy for that extra hold against the pour. As seasons spin their wheel, these forces flirt fiercer in the high country's fickle folds. Envision a spring zephyr whipping through the Jemez caldera's vents, the air alive with the wild onions' green tang and the effervescent pop of geothermal bubbles far below, as a Jemez scout times his dispatch to the wind's waltz. Layered camisa blooms for the liftoff puff traders inbound. Watch the pass, the floral steam rising buoyant on the updraft, only for a rogue eddy to twirl it into a corkscrew that spirals wild, landing the message askew but intact on a basalt bluff where kin chuckle at the detour. Modern aside, we'd blame spotty service on towers, but these ancients pinned it on the planet's pulse no reboot button. Just a respectful nod to the next gust, and a relayer ready to course correct. Sarcasm sighs, soft as the sirocco. In an era of weather apps beeping alerts, imagine the irony scouts who could forecast a foe's flank, but folded to a front that flipped the forecast funny. First joke to jostle the jet stream. If breezes had attitudes, there'd be that friend who shows up fashionably late, turning your urgent duck and cover into a leisurely maybe mosey that way. And callbacks curl in like contrails. Remember those intertribal duels over the Rincon, where codes outfoxed the cavalry? Here, the weather joins the fray as wildcard ally. Storms scouring trails to cover tracks, while zephyrs zipped warnings past pickets, adding unpredictability that kept the bluecoats forever playing catch-up in the clouds. Deeper into the deluge's domain, autumn's chill fronts carve their chaos across the Colorado's rims, where downdrafts dump signals like discarded drafts. A Hualapai signaler, perched on a promontory slick with Ponderosa's butterscotch drip, battles the blast. Winds howling dirges through hoodoos, carrying the crisp snap of frost-kissed leaves, as he anchors his blanket with stones to steady the smother. 3 quick puffs for frost claims the field's harvest now, the smoke clawing upward in ragged bursts, only to be hammered flat by a cross-gust, reforming lower down in a stubborn smear that still spells salvation to the valley's edge. It's ASMR, edged with edge, the wind's wild whoop rattling your ribs, the fire's frantic hiss defying the damp, lulling you into a wary wonder, where every element's ensemble player, unpredictable as applause. Scholarly squalls brew gentle in these gusts. Thinkers tussle over the weathers. True tally, did it hone adaptability, birthing ever more nuanced codes resilient to the rogue, or merely mask mediocrity, Luck's lottery winning more wars than wit? The debate billows open, like a plume in a gale, ripe for your rainy day reverie. Quirky Eddy. Papago tales twirl to lightning lures, where fringe practices involved striking flint near thunderheads to sync signals with strikes. The flash and puff combo said to mesmerize storms into mercy, sparks dancing in the grey like fireflies in a fury, turning peril into pyrotechnics. These whimsical whispers then weave the wild into the wise, where alerts bent but rarely broke under nature's nudge. Picture a winter's wary watch over the San Simon Valley, snow dusting the creosote like confectioner's lace, the air a bracing bite of pine and possibility, as scouts huddle in lava tube lairs, layering snow-melted moss for insulated plumes that rose reluctant but resolute. A languid loop for tracks. Fresh patrol near, carried on crystalline currents that sparkled the smoke like stardust in the slush-grey sky. Laughter leaks low around the shared warmth, yarns of gales gone goofy swapped like hot rocks in a sweat lodge. The final curl fading into flurry. Second joke simmers. These elements were the ultimate party crashers. Breezes blowing up your spot, storms stealing the show. But hey, at least they brought their own special effects. As the firmament folds into night's featherbed, embers nestle into hush, the wind's lullaby weaving through the weave's soft susurrus over stone, faint flurries kissing coals, inviting eyelids to their easy droop. Third joke drifts dormant. If you'd appified this, it'd be windy. The alert edition accurate 50% of the time, the rest? Blame the breeze, darling. And so, with the gods' gambols gusting to a gentle close, these elemental enigmas exhale onward, toward legacies lingering in modern skies, where smoke's subtlety still shapes the signals we send. Those ancient curls now ghosts in the machine, lingering like half-remembered dreams in the folklore that cradles campfires and the tech that craves their cunning, tracing a subtle thread from mesa-top murmurs to the digital hum of our always-on age. As the 20th century's gears grind forward, eclipsing the last embers of reservation fires with the glare of electric lights, these sky whispers don't vanish, they infuse, their echoes persisting in the stories elders spin under fluorescent flickers and the algorithms that ape their art, influencing communication revolutions, from ham radios crackling in barns to the satellite swarms stitching the globe in silent seams. It's the original open-source code, folks passed from puff to pixel, proving that sometimes the quietest voices rewrite the rules loudest. Ease into the amber hush of a 1,920 seconds trading post on the Navajo Nation's edge, where the air hangs dusty with the scent of wool bolts and fry bread cooling on wire racks, the faint crackle of a Model T's magneto underscoring the trader's tales swapped over coffee black as midnight. An old Chiricahua, his hands gnarled like pinyon roots from decades of layering greens, leans into the lamplight, weaving yarns of Geronimos plumes that dance dodges around Gatling guns, his voice a gravelly ASMR that hushes the room like falling snow. These weren't just bedtime beats. They were blueprints, folklore framing the signals as spirit sent, sky strings plucked by thunderbirds to tie the people tight. Kids wide-eyed on the plank floor absorb it. The stories, rhythm syncing with the post's creak and the distant howl of a freight train modern intrusion. Yet the tale bridges it, turning iron rails into echoes of those old thermals, carrying kin farther than any puff ever dreamed. Mainstream history bookmarks it neat. In the 1,930 seconds, anthropologists like Ruth Benedict documented smoke law in patterns of culture, crediting southwestern signals as precursors to semiotics, their pause plume syntax influencing early ethnography, and even World War II code breakers who borrowed layered bursts for visual ciphers, proving the haze's hush had half a world away. Feel the bridge in the bone. That post's potbelly stove popping like a signal fire. The coffee's bitter steam curling lazy under the tin roof. While outside, Model A's rumble mimics the wind's old whimsy, blending eras in a sensory splice that makes the past pulse present. Modern aside, we'd call it cultural IP now. Those folklore files feeding TED Talks on indigenous innovation. But back then, it was just survival stories slipping into the lexicon like contraband wisdom. But nestled in the notebook's margins, a quirky tidbit twinkles from the twilight. Fringe whispers from Laguna Pueblo matriarchs hint at dream signals, where elders claim to send puffs in sleep visions during the Dust Bowl 30 seconds, guiding kin to waterholes via subconscious sketches, plumes etched in the mind's eye. Decoded at dawn over shared peaky bread, the cornmeal's papery snap punctuating the retellings. Imagine the ritual. A sleeper by the Hogan door, breathing deep the night's cool sagbrush hush, releasing an internal layer that wafted to a relative's reverie miles off, blooming as a gut hunch to dig at the dry wash. Historians still argue whether this was prescient pattern recognition, subtle cues from shared landscapes, internalized as signals or pure sci-fi, the collective unconscious playing telephone with thermals. Either way, it's a dreamy detour, turning folklore into a foggy frontier where smoke meets the subconscious, like hacking your own REM for RSS feeds on rain. As decades dust the trading posts into relics, these echoes electrify elsewhere in the ham radio shacks of the 1,940 southwest, where Navajo code talkers, fresh from Pacific foxholes, tinker with crystals and coils under skies still scarred by contrails. The air buzzes with static's electric tang, mingling with the oiled leather of headsets and the faint ozone bite of vacuum tubes warming up. As operators riff on old codes, a steady hum interrupted by keyed bursts, aping those layered puffs to scramble Axis ears. Folklore fuels the fire here, tales of great Grand Scout signals whispered over the wire, inspiring the talker's unbreakable tongue, their voices a vocal veil that saved ships and sank foes. Sensory hum settles in. The keys' cool click under thumb, the speaker's warm crackle like embers revived, lulling you into the trance where analog arcs the ancient, turning battlefield bites back to breath. Sarcasm simmers soft as the signals fade. While the world wired up with wires, these echoes proved you don't need copper when you've got culture cheaper, and way less likely to short in a sandstorm. First joke to tickle the tubes. If smoke signals had gone corporate, the code talkers would have unionized for puff parity, demanding royalties every time a Morse dit danced like a decoy burst. And callbacks waft in like warm-up drafts. Remember the weather's whimsical wagers, those breezes betting against the bold? Here, in the legacy's glow, they ghost into gadgets, inspiring resilient relays that shrug off interference. From radio skips to router resets, the subtlety schooling silicon on staying sly, pushing into the silicon 70 seconds, where Pong pixels flicker in dorm rooms, and the air hums with the plastic whiff of circuit boards fresh from the factory. These influences infiltrate the invisible, satellite pioneers poring over Pueblo patterns in NASA briefs, borrow the layered leapfrog for orbital handoffs, signals bouncing from bird to bird like puffs over plateaus, their digital descendants dissolving into the ionosphere's blue much as grey did into azure. Folklore filters through, too. Hopi consultants on shuttle teams, sharing mesa myths that shaped error correction codes, pauses in the data stream echoing those deliberate drags of damp fronds, ensuring messages traversed the void without a vapor trail. Modern aside, it's the ultimate upgrade from wet grass to wetware, where AI now nods to native nuance in natural language nets, parsing pauses like a scout scanning the sky. Deeper still, the 90 seconds net boom bottles the breath. Early internet protocols crib from smoke sparsity. Minimalism in the markup that lets packets punch through noise. inspired by ethnographies tracing those tribal telegraphs to TCP. IPs, tidy tiers. Picture a coder in a Santa Fe co-op, the room redolent of green chile, roasting on a hot plate, and the faint, musty rustle of archived tapes, fingers flying over keys as she weaves in echo algorithms drawn from canyon law data rebounding resilient, like plumes amplified over arroyos. It's ASMR in the age of access. The keyboard's soft clack mimicking blanket slaps. The screen's glow a pale proxy for ember light, drawing you down the rabbit hole where folklore forks the future. Scholarly static crackles gentle here. A low buzz in the background. Academics debate doggedly if this influence is direct descent. Did Smoke's syntax seed semiotics that sprouted cyber? A straight shot from signal to server or serendipitous shadow? Convergent cunning where cultures converge without credit? The question hums unresolved, like a half-tuned station, tuning your thoughts to the tangle, quirky static. Fringe futurists in Burning Man 99 allegedly prototyped neo-puffs, laser-laced smokes for ad hoc nets in the dust, claiming ancestral vibes vectored the vapor, turning festival fog into fiber-optic forerunners with a whiff of sage. These lingering legacies, then, lace the modern with the misty, where subtlety still steals the show. Envision a midnight scroll through a VR sim of Chaco's signals, the headset's cushioned seal warm on your cheeks, virtual thermals tickling your ears as digital plumes curl in code-compliant curls, folklore footnotes flickering like fireflies in the HUD, laughter leaks from late-night coders, swapping puff puns over IPAs that foam like failed firings, the air thick with hops and history's haze, second joke simmers. These echoes in tech are like that uncle at Thanksgiving, always crashing the chat with back-in-my-day stories. But damn if they don't spice the stream. As the century crests into our cluttered now, satellites swarm like starlings, their silent syncopations a symphony of the subtle, Smoke's airs handing off horizons in handoffs too swift for the eye. The wind outside your window whispers it still, carrying a faint char from some distant burn, bridging the binary back to the breath. Third joke drifts digital. If you'd patented those puffs, Elon be hawking sky signals too for Mars, extra layers for low-grav lifts, with in-app purchases for premium pauses. And so, with the modern skies stitched in subtle seams, these persistent echoes exhale onward, toward the unsung heroes whose hidden tales surface like embers from ash, uncovering the personal perils behind those dissolving sky ghosts. Uncovering the personal perils behind those dissolving sky ghosts. Those fragile filaments that cost more than a singed fingertip or a scorched sleeve. As forgotten scouts, stories surface from the sediment of time like relics dredged from a dry riverbed, revealing the intimate gambles etched into every curl, lungs seared by acrid backdrafts. Nights spent in fevered vigil after a gust turned guardian into prey. In the shadowed ledgers of the Southwest's silent sentinels, these unsung souls emerge not as mythic silhouettes, but as flesh and bone bearers of the breath, their hidden tales a mosaic of mishaps and metal that humanizes the haze, turning tactical wisps into testaments of the terribly tender risks they shouldered, alone against the anvil of the empty sky. Slip into the sepia-toned hush of a 1,940 seconds boarding school dormitory on the Fort Apache Reservation, where the air clings heavy with the starch of laundered uniforms and the faint, illicit whiff of smuggled sage burning in a tin cup under the bunk. A boy named Chateau, grandson of the very scout who'd shadowed Geronimo's last flight, huddles with a cluster of cousins, their whispers weaving through the creak of iron bed frames and the distant drone of a Victrola scratching out big band swing from the rec room. Under the covers tent, flashlight beam jittering like a nervous firefly, he recounts his grandfather's untold yarn, the 1,886 dash across the Animus Valley, where old Esquinay, that wiry whisper of the winds, layered his fire too hastily under a harvest moon. The wet grass catching a spark that leaped to his sleeve like a vengeful flea. No time for heroics, just a frantic roll in the dust. The char of cotton searing skin to the quick, leaving a scar like a crescent moon on his forearm, a private badge for the puff that saved 20 souls from a cavalry noose tightening at dawn. These tales don't thunder. They trickle, soft as the seep that fed his greens, surfacing in fragments from yellowed diaries or the offhand asides of elders at summer powwows, where the air thrums with the sweetgrass braid of fry-bread stalls and the rhythmic thump of hoop drums echoing off arena walls. Sensory solace folds around you, the cool kiss of adobe against your back. As you lean into the storyteller's circle, the faint tickle of dust motes in the beam of a setting sun slanting through cottonwood leaves, and that weighted hush when the punchline lands not in laughter but in a collective nod, acknowledging the ache behind the art. Esquinet's risk wasn't outlier. It was ordinary outrage. The scout's lot where a misplaced ember could brand you for life, or a backdraft smoke curling inward on a whim of wind could choke the breath from your chest mid-message, leaving you gasping in the grit while your plume pleaded for you. Mainstream history honors it in passing. Army surgeons' logs from the 1,872nd Geronimo pursuits tally smoke-burn casualties among Apache captives, noting cases like that of Scout Noche, who in 1883 lost an eye to a flare-up during a signal for surrender feint, the hot ash exploding like a punctuation mark gone rogue, blinding him in service to the slight that slipped the band's noose. It was the hidden toll of the trade, these personal perils penciled in as footnotes, where lungs blackened over years of inhaling the bite of burning mule fat, or joints stiffened from hours perched on precarious perches, blankets fanned till fingers cramped like claws. Feel the forge of it, that initial sizzle against flesh, the acrid bloom filling your nostrils like regret's own perfume, lulling you into the litany of losses that lay at every launch. But from the fringes of family firesides, a quirky tidbit kindles like contraband coals. Oral threads from the White Mountain Apache spin, yarns of ghost scars, where scouts like Old Diablo claimed their burns glowed faintly under moonlight. A-spirits thank you for messages that merited the mischief supposedly etched by ancestral embers that healed slower but stronger, turning wound to ward. Picture the ritual rub. Ash mixed with prickly pear pulp daubed on the sear, the gel's cool sting easing the fire's fury, while whispers promised the mark would whisper back in dreams, guiding future puffs true. Historians still argue whether this was folk pharmacopoeia. Did the aloes alozin really speed the mend, or was it the placebo of purpose, pain transmuted by tale? Either way, it's a fringe flicker of fortitude, wrapping peril in poetry, like turning a paper cut into a plot twist with a side of supernatural swagger. As these stories seep into the light, they spotlight the solitude, sting the scout's isolation, perched solo on a fang of rock, while the clan hunkered hidden, every gust a gamble that could gust your secret straight to the enemy camp. Envision a 1,892nd eve in the Peloncillo's prickly shroud. The air a cocktail of night-blooming cereus, cloying jasmine, and the metallic tang of storm-washed stone. As a young Navajo named Hastin, yes, that Hastin Tlotzi of legend climbs alone to relay riders mass at the pass. His layers laid with trembling hands. The fires heat a hesitant hug against the chill creeping up his spine. A downdraft betrays him mid-burst, smoke spilling earthward like spilled ink, drawing a patrol's lantern glow too close. He bolts, heart hammering like a war drum in his ears, thorns raking shins to ribbons as he dives into a crevice, holding breath, till the bluecoat's curses fade on the breeze. Modern aside, we'd geotag that trauma on Strava, but these scouts mapped it in muscle memory, every scar a shortcut to survival's school. Sarcasm settles soft as the settling ash. In a Netflix age of armored heroes, these bare-skinned signalers were the real action flicks, unscripted, uninsurable, with zero stunt doubles for the Smoke in the Eyes sequel. First joke to nudge the narrative. If Scouts had Yelp for purchase, it'd be great views. But the wind's a total flake cancelled my signal twice. 0 stars. And callbacks breathe through like a familiar updraft. Remember those legacy echoes in the Code Talker's crackle? Well, Hastin's heirs carried that peril forward. Their granddad's gasps encoded in the unbreakable, turning personal pitfalls into public prowess, without a single footnote for the fright. Deeper into the diary's dim, a woman's tale twists the thread. In the 1,920 seconds, border skirmishes afterglow, Scoutswoman Lozen's sister to Victorio, the Apache Joan of Arc risked more than skin in her solo sends, layering fires while evading Yaqui rivals turned US allies. A stray spark igniting her braid during an ambush alert that singed scalp to the quick, leaving her half bald and half feral till the regrowth came in defiant white streaks. Her peril was layered to gender's gamble in a man's war, whispers of witch from her own for stealing the sky's secrets. Yet she persisted, puffs her prayer against the patriarchy's pull, sensory shiver, the tug of singed hair like a bad haircut from hell, the night's velvet wrap cooling the crown's crown of thorns, and that defiant dawn when she climbed again, blanket in blistered grip, proving peril's price paid in puffs unbowed. Scholarly sighs stir here, gentle as a ghost's graze. Thinkers tangle over the tales. Tally do these surfacing stories, spotlight systemic sacrifice. The Scouts as expendable edges of Empire's endgame, or spotlight individual agency. Lone wolves weaving their own wolf howls into the wind. The debate hangs hazy, open as an unfinished plume, pondering the personal in the panorama. Quirky underbelly. Fringe feminist fringes frame Lozen's lore with lunar layers, claiming she timed signals to moon pulls for feminine thermals that lifted lighter. Did estrogen edge the updrafts, or was it matrilineal mythmaking at its moonlit best? These hidden heroes, then, haunt the haze with their humanity. Perils, not plot devices but the pulse beneath the plot. Picture a modern mesa meetup, under a sky stitched with contrails, descendants tracing their elders' scars with fingertips featherlight, the air alive with the sizzle of grilled lamb and the low hum of solar panels charging forgotten frequencies. Laughter laps, soft tales of singed brows swapped like trading cards while a young reenactor layers a demo fire. The steams sigh a salute to the risks reborn. Second joke simmers. These Scouts were the original firefighters, literally putting out their own flames. But hey, at least the overtime was sky high. As twilight tints the buttes in bruised plum, the circle tightens, embers winking like winking ancestors, the final story fading on a sigh, a lone puff for we endure, curling slow into the cooling vault, its ASMR etched in endurance. The faint crack of cooling rock, the wind's wistful weave through yucca fronds, drawing you down into the dream where perils dissolve like their dispatches, leaving only the legacy's light touch. Third joke lingers lazy. If you'd bottled their bravery as balm, it'd be Scouts on a salve soothes the sting, but warns may cause flashbacks to fiery fails. And so, with the hero's hidden heartbeats humming into the hush, these surfacing sagas summon us to the finale, where fading puffs fold into twilight's tender truce, Those last, languid curls of the 20th century's close drifting not into oblivion but into a softer surrender, as the eras draw their curtains on the southwest's silent sentinels, signals dissolving like half-remembered dreams into the vast hush of a world grown clamorously loud with wires and waves. In this gentle unraveling, from the reservation's radio-lit nights to the digital dawn's relentless chatter, The ancient telegraph of the skies fades not with a bang but a breath, its enduring hush a quiet rebuke to our noisy now, reminding us that some secrets travel best when they touch nothing but the wind, leaving behind not monuments but murmurs that settle in the soul like dust after a desert rain. It's the sunset of subtlety, folks, where the last scouts pass the plume to posterity, their whispers weaving into the white noise of progress, proving that even as the fires cool, the embers of ingenuity glow on, soft and unassuming as a sigh in the stars. Breathe easy into the ochre-tinged hush of a 1,950 seconds, Hogan on the Utah-Arizona line, where the air pools warm with the lingering kiss of pinon incense and the faint, buttery melt of mutton stew cooling in clay bowls, the day's last light slanting through the doorway like a reluctant farewell. An elder named Atsidi, his voice a weathered flute honed by decades of decoding dawns, gathers the young ones round the dying coals. Now electric bulbs buzz faint overhead, casting shadows that mimic the old flicker. He traces in the sand with a stick gnarled as his knuckles the patterns of yore. The triple puff for all clear, the spiraling drag for dreams deferred. His words weaving a tapestry where signals don't end but evolve, dissolving into the reservation's resilient rhythm. The kids lean in, cheeks flushed from tag in the twilight. The sensory hush wrapping them like a familiar shawl, the sand's cool silk under palms, the night's first cricket chirp threading the quiet like a needle through cloth. And that profound pull of the tale, pulling you too into the twilight where puffs fade but their poetry persists. These closings aren't abrupt. They're like the land itself, eroding graceful over time. By the 1,960 seconds, as highways scar the mesas with blacktop veins, the last wild signals flicker in the borderlands. Scouts like old Chatto's kin, relaying patrol's thin cross at moonless across the Tohono Udham's spine. Puffs leaping one final leap before the CB radios crackle in, their static squawk a pale echo of the steam's sigh. Mainstream history marks the milestone. The 1975 Indian Self-Determination Act breathes new life into tribal comms, with smoke law consulted for emergency protocols in the four corners, where layered alerts inspire low-tech backups for blackouts, proving the haze's hush outlast the hubbub. Its simplicity, a safeguard when satellites stutter and cells go silent. Feel the fade. That initial bloom against the gloaming, the plume's grey grace lingering long in the lavender light, dissolving slow into the deepening indigo where crickets take up the cadence, their chorus a coda to the coal's contented pop. But nestled in the nooks of these narratives, a quirky tidbit twinkles like a last ember's spark. Fringe elders from the San Carlos Apache murmur of eternal puffs, wisps said to linger in the aurora's rare dances over the high desert, where geomagnetic flurries allegedly refract old signals into spectral scripts, ghostly patterns blooming green in the northern glow, guiding lost hikers or whispering woes to the wise. Imagine the vigil, a scout's descendant under the borealis bizarre veil, the air electric with ion's crisp tang, and the faint ozone zing of skystorm, reading the lights as layered lore, a final flourish from the ancestors' archive. Historians still argue whether this was atmospheric artistry. Do solar winds really recycle relic smokes into auroral art? Or is it the heart's hologram, projecting puffs onto the plasma for solace in the settling? Either way, it's a whimsical wink from the wild, turning closure into cosmic continuation, like finding your old mixtape scratching on the stars. As the 80 seconds cable in their clamor, MTV's glare gilding the glow of TV trays in trailer parks, the signals slip fully into story. Folklore festivals on the res featuring puff plays where actors fan blankets to mimic the old magic. The air alive with the whoop of onlookers and the sweet char of vendor carts hawking blue corn mush. Modern aside, in our TikTok torrent, these reenactments go viral as ancestral ASMR, racking views with slow-mo smokes curling like slow-cooked secrets, bridging the binary back to the breath without a single filter. Sarcasm settles soft as the settling dusk. While we doom-scroll our days away, these fading arts remind us that brevity was beauty puffs that packed a punch in under a minute. No ads interrupting the arc. Callbacks curl in like cooling currents. Remember those unsung scars from the Scouts' solitary stakes? The singes and stings that surfaced in hushed huddles? Here, in the twilight's truce, they heal into heirlooms, passed like heirloom tomatoes at potlucks. The peril's price paid forward in pride. And the weather's old whims, they whisper on in wildfire watches, where layered alerts now blend smoke signals with apps. Breezes still betting, but now buffered by bites. First joke to ease the evening. If signals had retirement plans, they'd be sipping pinyon tea on a porch, complaining about kids these days with their emoji exhaust back in my plume. We kept it concise, deeper into the 90 seconds neon nudge, where dial-up drones mimic the winds. Old wine. The hush endures in healing circles. NAACP, no wait. Native wellness retreats where therapists thread signal stories into sound baths. The gong's low thrum echoing the blanket's thwack. Participants exhaling in sync to release the plume. The air scented with Palo Santos resinous release, and the earthy undertone of red clay masks cracking dry, its dissolution dignified. Puffs folding into mindfulness, their silence a sanctuary in the surround sound of self-help shelves. Sensory serenity steals over you the gongs, vibration humming in your hollows like a distant updraft. The smoke from a single sage stick curling deliberate, not distressed, lulling lids to their lazy lower as the circle sways. Stories shared in the soft spaces between breaths, scholarly shades lengthened gentle in this gloam. Savants speculate softly if the fade was forced. Eclipse did assimilation's glare, snuff the signal's spark, or did they self-select into subtlety, evolving into subtler forms like signed songs in powwow sign language? The discourse drifts dreamy, unresolved as a half-huffed curl, musing on the hush hold. Quirky coda, Yavapai Yana's fringe to whisper winds return. Claiming climate shifts stir spectral signals in her boobs. Dust devils dancing old patterns. Swirls that spell remember in the grit. A fringe forecast for folks who forgot to forget. These enduring hushes, then, hush the noisy world into notice, where dreams dissolve but deposit their dust in the dawn. Picture a millennial mesa musing, under a sky scratched by chemtrails, a young weaver pausing her loom, the shuttles click, a faint fan of forgotten blankets to gaze at a contrail curling coy, imagining it a plume's poor cousin carrying carry-on across the commute. Laughter lifts light from the lodge nearby, kin calling over solar-lit lawns, the air aglow with LEDs' cool gleam and the warm whisper of wind chimes tuned to tribal tones. Second joke simmers sunset soft. These fading arts are like that ex who ghosts gracefully leaves you with the good memories. No baggage, just a breeze that says we had our time. As the new millennium's buzz builds to a blur, the signals settle into sacred slots museum dioramas, where holograms huff harmless hazes. School curricula curling codes into coding classes, teaching kids to layer loops like they layered leaves. The hush holds, a hand on the heart of heritage, enduring in every exhale of an elder's tale or a activist's tweet threading tradition into the thread. Third joke twinkles toward the trim. If Puffs could podcast, it'd be Whispers Unwind episodes that end mid-sentence. Because why spoil the silence? And so, with the twilight tendering its truce, the eras ease into an endless evening, Puffs no longer rising but resting. Their hush, a home in the heart's quiet corner, where the world may roar on, but the wind still knows the words. Now, as the last light lingers on the horizon's hem, soft and saffron as a sagebrush sunset. Let the story settle like silt in a stilling stream, carrying you gently toward the banks of slumber. Those ancient whispers, once wild against the wind's wide wing, now nestle near, their hush a hand upon your brow, soothing the day's distant din into a dream's delightful drift. No more need for the chase of canyons or the curl of cunning codes. Here, in this velvet veil of violet, the signals sing their silent song, reassuring that all secrets find their season, dissolving not into dark but into the dawn's own delicate draw. Breathe deep the night's nurturing nearness. Feel the earth's easy exhale cradle your cares. Each breath a bridge from the bold to the blissful, where worries wander off like will-o'-the-wisps into welcoming woods. The stars, those steadfast scribes, scribe no more strife, only serenity's subtle script, inviting your eyes to their effortless ease, lids lowering like leaves in a lullaby's lap. Rest now, dear wanderer of these whispered ways, in the warm weave of what was, and what whispers still safe, seen, softly held in the hush that holds us all. Sweet dreams await, just a sigh away.